Hi everyone, it's Kino here. Welcome to this Ashtanga tune-up series. Today we're going to be taking a look at Purvottasana. This is reverse plank pose. And it's a wonderful asana that really helps you get that lift from the pelvis. We want to remember that this is a backbending asana, so we want to apply the same principles as backbending. Now the most confusing part about Purvottasana is that the shoulders will internally rotate to give the chest space to elevate. It kind of feels like you want to externally rotate the shoulders, but the correct direction again is internal rotation. So that's the first thing that we really have to establish. Once the shoulders are really well in place, then we can think about how to lift the pelvis. So let's first look at that internal rotation of the shoulders. You can take a seat and then place the feet hips width apart, and then take the hands back behind you. Point the fingers in towards your hips, and then we'll work with the shoulders. So I want you to internally rotate the shoulders so the humerus rolls forward. Then I want you to externally rotate the shoulders, and you'll feel your fingers almost want to spiral out. So this position, while it might be comfortable from here, is not how we want to try to lift up. I'm going to point those fingers in. Then roll the shoulders a little bit forward and bend the elbows. We're going to try reverse tabletop to really just get the feeling of what to do with the shoulders. Now, what will happen is as you internally rotate the shoulders, the chest will want to compress or collapse. So we actually want to use a kind of counterbalance of opposing forces. Shoulders internally rotate and then expand the chest. Right, let's hold that for a couple breaths and just feel the chest rising up. Once the chest rises up, we have to remember to keep the navel drawn in, and it's really easy to pooch the belly out, but I want you to suck the belly in instead. Hold that for one more breath. Next, chest is expanding. Then root down in through your feet. Send the pelvis forward to lift the hips up. And just take a look at the belly and make sure the knees are spiraling in. And when that feels good, we're going to drop the head back. Then exhale, let's sink all the way down. Now I want you to find your blocks, and we're gonna take a block in between the knees. This will help you activate the legs just a little bit more. Okay, we ready? Internally rotate the shoulders, then send the hips up and forward, and then we'll drop the head gently back. Let's hold it for a few breaths. Good, activate your thighs, and then exhale. Let's gently sink down. Move the block over to the side, and let's just rest for a moment. Okay, so now when we come back to seated, then we've kind of worked through the dynamics of the posture, and we can now begin to try with the legs in the reverse plank position. So in plank position, your legs are relatively close together. Let's start off with working the legs. I want you to point your feet, placing the balls of the big toes close together, elevate the kneecaps and roll your thighs gently inward. When we roll the thighs gently inward, this really helps the legs just kind of track, and you should feel the legs working from here. So we'll lift the center of the chest up, take the hands back and internally rotate the shoulders. The internal rotation of the shoulders helps move your trapezius muscle forward. This allows you to drop the head back. Now play around with that for a moment. Make sure your neck feels nice and safe, and we drop the head back. Good. Now let's get into this asana in two different ways. So there's two different ways to work with the asana. We're going to roll the shoulders forward, keeping your thighs nice and straight, and then without expanding the chest first, let's send the pelvis forward and up. Once the pelvis is forward and up, lift the rib cage away, and we'll hold for just one breath, 2 breaths, exhale, sink down. Now, a big mistake that people make in Purvottasana is that they try to touch the toes to the ground. See, the toes don't need to touch the ground, but as your hips go higher and higher and higher, the toes will reach to the ground. Now, what can happen is, this is our first way to get into the asana. The second way to get into the asana, sometimes because we're not looking at the belly, we can lose sight of what's happening kind of from the waist and down. So let's take a look at that. This is also a good way to get into the asana. Point the feet, lift the kneecaps, and then you're gonna reach back and expand the chest. So for those of you that have a hard time expanding your upper back, this is probably the good way to start this pose. Then lift the pelvis up and forward. All right, I'm going to show you what not to do. You don't want to squeeze your butt and turn the feet out. Otherwise, we can end up kind of sinking down instead of spiraling up. We don't want to push the belly out. Instead, we want to draw the belly in. All right, that's going to help keep you targeted deep inside. Now, last thing we're going to try is to do it with a chair. So let's bring that chair on over. All right, we're going to use the chair for accessibility, and this is a really good option just to get that feeling of really how to get a maximum lift. Right? So let's say we're doing a practice in a chair, or it's not advised to go down to the ground, then we can explore how to think about getting getting that feeling and sensation of the pelvis rising up from the seat of the chair. Taking the hands onto the seat of the chair, you can walk just a little bit forward. Then you're going to drop your butt down. After you drop the butt down, we'll internally rotate the shoulders and then lift the pelvis up and forward. And it's the same technique. So the shoulders roll forward, the chest expands, the navel draws in, and then exhale, we sink the hips back down. You can also try that with the block. So sometimes it's useful, again, just to make sure the legs are activated, since in the reverse tabletop variation, your feet are going to be hips width apart. Squeezing on the block will help activate the inner thighs, giving you that hint of internal rotation. Let's try it again. Holding on to the very edges of the seat of the chair, drop your pelvis a little down so you can feel the weight in the shoulders. Then internally rotate the shoulders, expand the chest, and send the hips up and forward. If this variation, you probably don't want to drop the head all the way back, just gaze lightly forward and feel the trapezius muscle supporting the neck. And then exhale, we're going to sink the hips back. We can remove the block. And then let's give it one last shot on the chair. This is going to be quite challenging. So just because you're doing asanas on a chair doesn't mean that suddenly the asanas are easy. You're using the chair to assist you in the practice, and practice always has its own challenges. So now we're going to try with the legs forward and straight. So you're going to reach kind of outward to make sure that you have a good angle for your reverse plank. You may need to play around with that a little bit. When you come forward, we'll bend the knees, drop the pelvis, and then reach the hips up and forward. And then we're in that reverse plank, and exhale, we bend down, find the seat of the chair, and gently move back. All right, so here are all the options for Purvottasana. All right, we've got seated on the chair, few different variations, seated on the floor. Remember, the key technical principles are that we're internally rotating the hip joints with that, just like a hint of it, and then the navel draws in. The power of your lift up comes from the pelvic floor, and you're expanding the chest, and as the chest expands, you're working to oppose that expansion with internal rotation of the shoulders, and we need that to support the neck. Few points to watch out for. If you're over squeezing your butt to try to get the lift, you may actually block your flexibility. It's not that you shouldn't activate the glute muscles, just be careful of when you do, and then look at what's happening with the rotation of the shoulders for this asana so that the energy can flow freely. Find the variation that works for you, even if it's the prep variation from the floor. Don't push too hard too soon, and let your practice evolve over time. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope this inspires your practice. Keep practicing.